Hey everyone, it's John Lorden. Welcome to another episode of JohnnyVlogs. And this week is going to go a little bit different. I'm doing some travel over the weekend, so I'm mixing up the show schedule a little bit this week. And of course, coming off of last week, which was really tough. And by the way, thank you all for the very supportive comments about Gary. Both my wife Vera and I really appreciate it. You guys have been amazing, so thank you. But I did want to make sure to get a video out for you guys today. So I had a question sent in from a viewer on one of the conversation threads on YouTube, and it goes like this. We're looking at, I believe it's NRG Lightworker. Hope that I've got that right. Thank you for this site. I learned so much, but I want to learn more. Can you please share some wisdom for those of us that are new to, quote, brain scratching ourselves? What is your process? How do you sift through all of the data? What are your favorite/least favorite websites for information gathering? How do you find the most recent information on each case? In short, how can we become a better brain scratcher team in order to help you and all of the families of the missing? Thank you again for all of your hard work. NRG Lightworker, and I hope I got your name right there. There's a lot of things to dive into with this question. Let's take it piece by piece. So first of all, if you want to learn about my process, at www.brainscratchers.com, if you look on the left panel here, you'll see right under missing persons tips is researchers. If you click on that, this will give you kind of the basic formula that I follow for getting research together for a particular episode. And I've written it in kind of two different ways. One of them is about covering a murder story, but could also work for missing persons episode. And then the other one is if it's just more of like a conspiracy theory or something like that. So let's just touch on these real quick. So the framework for a brain scratch is relatively simple. First of all, I look for a timeline of the known events, such as the day of the murder/disappearance. Timeline is very important, particularly in missing persons cases. We want to understand what the person was doing leading up to their disappearance for a few reasons. First of all, that can give us some insight into what might be going on with their intent. Secondly, that can let certain people know about where they should have been trying to remember if they saw them somewhere. For example, if you have a timeline that says that someone was at 7-Eleven at 6 o'clock in the morning and you live in the area, you might think back to that day and say, you know what, was I at that 7-Eleven? Yeah, did I see this person? Maybe. So the timeline is typically a very important part of a brain scratch episode, in particular, if we're talking about searchlight and full-blown brain scratch. Number two, potential suspects or people of interest in the original investigation. Of course, we want to know who police are looking into. Number three, stories or theories on the motive and where those theories came from. Once again, it's important to sometimes know where this information is coming from so we can understand the intent of that information. Sometimes information can be biased. As a matter of fact, in a lot of research I do, I feel like information can be biased. So I want to understand the source of that information as well. And if you can drill it back to an original source, for example, if you see something on a news article, but it's saying that a police officer said that, if you can go back to the actual press release where that police officer is being quoted, quite frequently you'll find additional information or maybe more information that gives you a little bit of a different perspective than the way that it was put into the news article. So tracing back the sources to their origination point is also really important. Any noted discrepancies to the official story. So this happens frequently. I will read so many different sources about the same story and I'll say, well, it's weird because over here they're saying that the person got out of the car, but over here they're saying that this person was found in the car. So you really want to understand where those discrepancies are and then try to figure out which side of that discrepancy has more merit. For example, if you're hearing from a police report that the person was found in the car, that's quite a bit stronger than I read on, Joe Smith's blog that the person was actually out of the car. So once again, it kind of ties back into where the information is coming from as well. And then fringe theories. And that's really kind of more for a regular full-blown brain scratch. I don't think that in Searchlight we really go into fringe theories too much, but other theories certainly. For example, we don't look at Searchlight cases and say, was this person taken by aliens or something like that? I don't think it's respectful to the families of those cases to take the conversations in that direction. There would have to be super compelling information, like, we've got video footage of some beam of light hitting this person and them disappearing. Then I would feel comfortable talking about those types of theories for a Searchlight. But other theories, certainly, once you collect all this information and you're starting to understand, it's almost like you're making a profile in your head of what this story is and where the truth is within this story. Sometimes that might lead you to believe that, oh, this person, one possibility we have to consider is that they ran away because they didn't want to live with their parents anymore. Or we have to consider that an ex-boyfriend was upset at them because we know that he said some weird things to the police. So that's really, there's kind of, I guess you would consider it like a 2 or 3 step process. Get the story together, then look at where the information is coming from. And that kind of helps you get this guide of truth in terms of the story. Once you feel like you have something reasonably close to what the true story is, then think about the possibilities for what is going on in this story or where that person went. And that is basically that's basically a BrainScratch kind of in a nutshell. Now, I know you also asked about how you sift through all of the data. For me, I've been doing this for a long time, even before BrainScratch. When I was working in IT, frequently I would have to investigate business units where I wasn't always the expert in whatever that business unit was doing. For example, I'm not a lawyer, so I supported legal departments for about a decade. Anytime that I was trying to help them with a business-related problem, I would have to interview them and basically collect all this information, interview several people, and sometimes you hear the same stories over and over and over. And I think that's where a lot of people would kind of go fuzzy or start to get uninterested in what they're learning. But for me, I keep diving in there. I want to hear the same stories coming from different people so I can understand what parts of that story are really true. In particular with IT, sometimes you'll hear a story from a worker and it doesn't quite hold up when you're actually talking to their manager about that same business process. So it was really something I had to learn about. Yeah, you feel like you've heard this before, but go through it again anyway and take notes. And then at the end, compare all those notes and see where these lines all match up. And then you know that you're starting to get that profile of the truth together that I was kind of talking about. At this point, when I'm doing episodes, I am just crunching all this information right into my eye sockets and into my brain and sitting with it and then considering it. Sometimes you might come to a consideration where you want to do more research, so then you do more research on that angle. Sometimes that will move your little line of truth through the story when you have additional facts like that. It's just an ongoing process. Nowadays, it's a little different for me because I know I only have a finite period of time before I need to start shooting and editing and get that thing uploaded for you guys. So I've got it down to where I'm doing a lot of this process myself. Sometimes I have, researchers that contribute information. That gives me a major kickstart, and then it gives me more flexibility for that kind of theorizing time and, checking facts and things like that. But right now, I sift through all the data just by reviewing it and feeling where the truth in it is based on what the information is and where the information is coming from. Favorite, least favorite websites for information gathering. You'll notice on the channel, I use major media sources, but I'm pretty much only using direct quotes or direct facts that have been presented in those media sources. And then I'm looking at multiple media sources that are, once again, telling the same story. Sometimes you'll see variations, sometimes you won't, and you'll be able to tell, oh, look, these 4 publications just basically copied what this first one said over and over and over. And sometimes that's frustrating because I'm looking for better detail than that. And when I see that media publications are just literally copy pasting the same information across, multiple publications, it's a little bit heartbreaking. I would like to think that, people that are working in true media out there would give things a little more attention and time, and maybe, make a phone call or try to dig up some new information to actually help those cases. Sometimes I don't feel like that's necessarily happening. But favorite websites, I love using web sleuths because it has kind of an ongoing conversation that is that truth indicator that I was talking about, trying to find that line of truth through all the facts as they're being thrown at you. But it's also frustrating sometimes because there's a lot of additional commentary on web sleuths where I'm like, yes, it's nice that these people care, but do we need to read, 50 more comments about how heartbroken they are about this case? Let's try to help this case by actually discussing facts and theories about those facts. So I have like a little bit of a love-hate thing, I guess, with web sleuths, but in general, I love it. Same thing with Reddit. Those are the forums, those are the places where people are getting together to discuss these things. So in particular, for that last step where you're looking for opinions, those can be super, super valuable places. And they can really give you considerations that maybe you wouldn't have thought of before. But outside of that, I'm really looking at, I guess my favorite sources are like official autopsy report, official police report, press release from the police, as close as you can get to the people that are actually working the case or the ones responsible for notarizing what's going on in these cases. Those are the sources that are certainly my favorite. It's almost like playing that game of telephone when you were a kid. Once you have this guy repeat those facts, all of a sudden those facts might change a little bit. And then if these 4 publications are just repeating what he says, sometimes they'll change it a little bit, And by the time you get to that last story, it's just, you don't know how much of it is actually true or fact anymore. How can we become a better BrainScratch team to help the families of the missing? Honestly, where I see your guys' role in this is just knowing that I'm compiling all this information. I'm doing hours and hours of research to pull it together. I'm being very critical, typically, about the information that I'm reviewing because I want to make sure to get you guys as close to the best truth that I can find in those stories. And by best truth, I mean more accurate. I don't mean happiest. I don't mean creepiest. I don't mean what's going to get me most views. I mean, I'm looking at all this stuff to really try to find where the truth is and then to share that with you. And hopefully you guys are sharing that with other people to help raise exposure to this case using good facts. Because there's a lot of information out there that I come across that you can't lean on. And that's where I really appreciate things like being able to interview families, which I'm going to work on doing a lot more of in the future. Sometimes you get information that you just don't get from the publications from going that way. You also have to temper some of that information because you're sometimes getting interpersonal insight that is based on some very hard emotions. So there's even a balance that you have to consider when you're doing direct interviews like that. But I'm certainly going to try to do more of those in the future. So how you guys can help? Watch these videos, watch them with a critical eye yourself. If you feel like something isn't right, dig into it, find better sources, put it in the comment thread. If we're not talking about a theory that you think is a reasonable theory, put it in the comment thread. The families are coming more and more, especially with how big the channel's getting. They're coming more and more and reading these comment threads. Well-wishing, totally appreciated, but giving them other routes to pursue, other things to look into, I think that is really where your value is. And then, of course, just the basics of sharing it with other people to raise exposure, particularly for the missing persons cases or the unsolved murders cases. I hope I answered your questions for you. Really good question, NRG Lightworker. I really appreciate that you want to do more to help on these cases. And thank you for asking that. All right, everyone, that's this episode of Johnny Vlogs. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. Tomorrow, we're actually going to have an itchy mystery, and then I don't know what's going to happen for the rest of the week. I'm trying to get it back to normal, especially after what happened last week. I've not been able to quite focus in particular on doing exactly what we're talking about here. I need my brain in kind of a certain spot so that I can assimilate all this information and then have that kind of truth guide thing start working. And, you know, of course, with losing Gary last week, I just wasn't able to do that. So once again, thank you so much for your support and patience on that. Come back tomorrow for a really interesting Itchy Mysteries I think you guys are going to enjoy. And I'll see you back then on the Lord and Arts channel. Take care.